set up out there.
But that side yard has so many great fruit trees on it.
Yeah.
So it'll be good.
Pam sent it through.
Set up out there.
So we have, he's here for short-term rentals discussion. I don't know. It's VP's gonna.
Yeah, okay. You guys have any, no. Yeah. Okay. All right. It is just after 6 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. I am going to call to order. We have a quorum, so could we do some roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Mulvey,
Here.
Vice Chair Baggett, Commissioner Hanson, as of now, not here yet. Commissioner, I can't read my handwriting. Kirkley, Commissioner Trudgeon.
Here.
We have quorum, ma'am.
Okay. Everyone, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. To the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. First up, does anyone have any discussion points that are not on the agenda tonight? I'd like to open it up to public forum. No? All right. Can it be noted that Commissioner Hanson has arrived, please? 6:02.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right. So if there is no public forum or comments, we'll move to the consent agenda. We just have one item this evening. It's the Planning Commission minutes for March 9th of this year, as last month there was no meeting. Anyone have any comments?
I'll move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll second that.
Chair, Commissioner Kirkley,
Nope.
You have to say proof.
Vice Chair Baggett,
Aye.
Commissioner Trudgeon,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Chair Mulvey.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the public hearing. I propose that we start with item C, approving the site plan for the permit for 11821 Sweet Pea Way, just so we can get to the other items of discussion later, so we can get you out of here, if that's all right. All right.
Okay.
Over to you, Erin.
Yeah, thank you. So tonight I am recommending that the Planning Commission review the materials, hold a public hearing, and find that the project is categorically exempt under CEQA based on that it is an infill project, and adopt the resolution approving a site plan. The applicant, Campbell Corporation, is proposing to develop a currently vacant lot, which is just under 5 acres within the heavy industrial zoning district. The property was at one point outside of city limits, and that is when it was kind of pre-developed with the detention basin, the roads, the rough grading, things like that. And then it was annexed into the city. The applicant is proposing to build a 5,000 square foot steel shop building and a 2,000 square foot covered concrete pad. There will be additional site improvements out there like fencing, lighting, and parking and circulation. And the applicant can probably explain more about the businesses that will be out there, but mostly it will be heavy equipment servicing and repair facility, along with an area for a trailer retailer to have trailers for sale out there. And they will, other areas to be leased to heavy equipment operators for storage. Like I mentioned, the site was previously cleared and rough graded with some improvements done prior to it being annexed into the city. The storm water detention basin was installed at that time and utilities were stubbed out onto the site. So they will not be needing additional utilities out there right now. Based on the review from our engineering, they do want a report that the on-site detention basin will be sufficient for the development that is out there. And so that is, you'll see that in the recommended conditions of approval. So just going over some of the relevant data of the property, like I mentioned, it's just under 5 acres, located in the heavy industrial I2 zoning district. It's not within any historic districts, did not require any design review. They are proposing 7 parking spaces, which is within our code. They're also proposing a fencing along security fencing along and gates along the property. And they're not proposing to remove any landscaping, because as if you visited the site at all, there's nothing out there. The project is consistent with the general plan land use designation of industrial. Minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet. So they are, oops, I have a typo right there. So they obviously are over that. They are under their maximum lot coverage, which maximum allowed is 90%. They're about 5%. And their building height is about 25 feet. Maximum allowed is 50. They're consistent with the zoning. And they are consistent with the design standards. It's kind of a barn looking building, which will be tan with the red trim on it. And it is keeping with, it's consistent with the surrounding uses and the types of buildings out there. They're proposing the 7 parking spaces. They have the 6 feet, 8 foot tall security fencing. We'll have the 3-wire across the top, which is allowed within that zoning district. The access to the site is off of Sweet Pea Way, which is developed, and that is an access easement over that property. So all the properties up there use that. They're not proposing any landscaping at this time, and landscaping really isn't consistent with the use of the property. Staff is recommending that the project be, that you find that the project is exempt from CEQA. It is less than 5 acres in size. And there's not potential for critical habitat out there on the site. The project was sent out to both inside and outside agencies for review, and the comments that we received from those agencies have been incorporated into conditions of approval. I've listed the findings that required in the municipal code for the planning commission to approve a site plan permit. So the proposed site development is essential or desirable to the public convenience and welfare. This is a vacant site. It's bringing a business to our community, also a business that will be selling trailers, so sales tax to the community. The proposed site development will not impair integrity or character of the area in which is located or the zoning district. The use is consistent with the industrial zoning and consistent with the uses nearby. And the proposed site development will ensure that adequate public utilities and services are provided so that the project will not be detrimental to public health, safety, and general welfare. So with conditions, that finding can be met, and the and the utilities are already on the site. So I've expanded on the findings if you needed more information on making those findings. And I have broken the conditions of approval down into the kind of general ones that came from our sewer engineer, the conditions of approval from our building and city engineer, and then county health had some additional conditions of approval. So if you guys have any questions about the application or want us to pull anything up plans wise, let me know. Otherwise, we have both the project applicant and the project engineer here who will be able to answer any other project specific questions.
I just had a question. Seems like other industrial sites plans we've had, there's been some landscaping requirements for screening and stuff. I know we did that with the Brusatori project, and I would think I was on the planning commission when Sweet Pea was approved, and I thought we had some landscaping on that one too. So
Yeah, so that is a condition the planning commission can add. And it could either be at staff's approval or discretion, you give enough guidance for me to be able to sign off on it when they get their building permit. Or if you felt that you wanted to review it too, you could come back.
in our site plan application process, there's not a requirement for landscaping?
Let me pull that up. Hold on. Next section.
It's an industrial site. What are you wanting?
So it does mention it that to provide a landscaping plan. Because this is an industrial site with the other sites not having landscaping plans. I did not ask them to provide additional landscaping out there. Like I said, it's something that the planning commission can request if they want that. Let's see.
Gotcha.
I see the stormwater detention basin is half on and half off the property. Who's the sole responsibility of management and maintenance of that detention basin?
Got it. Chair Mulvey, members of the Planning Commission, I'm Robin Peters with Delta Engineering. The detention basin is in fact spanning the property line between two properties. It's designed to jointly serve this property and the adjoining property to the west. It's sized for, or it has the capacity for both of the properties, and there's an easement that surrounds the pond. So maintenance is jointly the obligation of the two property owners.
Anyone on the commission have any comments, questions? I do have one item. I see from the list, it's pretty adequately described, but I do want to note, since it is an industrial facility, can one of the conditions be met that in addition to Cooper regulations, can we ensure that it also complies with the California State Water Resource Control Board Industrial General Permit regulations?
Mhm.
Anyone have any other notes?
Can you repeat that so I can get it right?
It's the California State Water Resources Control Board.
Okay.
Stormwater.
Industrial,
Regulation.
see industrial general
IGP
permit.
To be specific,
I,
okay,
okay.
the IGP permit.
California State Water Resources Control. Okay, yeah, that can be added.
I'm guessing it's going to be a no-no, but we'll see.
The applicant is here. I don't know if you want to hear anything from them.
Everything else looks like it's adequately addressed.
Do you want to talk?
Is the public hearing open yet?
Would you, yeah, we opened it, but would you like to add any additional comments?
I do have one comment. Thank you, Aaron, for a complete staff report. I have really nothing to add that would augment the information that's in the staff report. I do note on the resolution, third whereas paragraph, the CEQA CADX is class 32 or should be class 32.
Oh, okay. Resolution.
I just ask that you make that change to the resolution before adopting it.
So just to
After-
clarify, instead of 15,332, it's just 30.
That's section 15332. It's class 32.
Yeah. Yeah, section, we'll just go back and look at I think I have it right in the.
It is correct in the
recommendation.
staff report.
I just don't have it, so we'll just
in the
change it to
resolution.
Happy to answer any other questions.
this.
Want to have any other additional questions at this time?
Thank you.
Okay.
Close public forum.
All right, I'll close the public forum at this time. Any commissioners like to add a comment or a motion to approve the resolution?
Well, I think we need to be consistent with screening landscaping along the highway there, the ridge roads. So that's what we've done with other industrial sites there. So it would be a matter of trees planted at a certain distance, probably species that are either native or able to grow in the climate we have here. So.
I remember we did the Brusatori one just because there was a house next to it. But I mean, obviously those really haven't also taken off and gosh, was that 5 years ago and they're still 3 feet tall?
Yeah, I don't know who follows up on these things.
So do we want to see if the applicant had any plans for, softening landscaping? I know one of the discussions we had with the applicant when we were out on the site and he was talking about having kind of that front part on Ridge being the items that were for sale, the trailers for sale, I'm not sure how many people are just driving and
Yeah.
stop to buy a trailer, but that is something where we want, people to know things are there for sale, spend your money.
I'd hate to
City.
block that. I mean, that's kind of the point of that. So I can see it.
I think it's important to note that, as you look at that row of industrial facilities, the Knife River cement plant, this property, the property next door that is used for, I'm not sure what, nothing is landscaped.
Nothing.
This is not an industrial park. It's industrial property that will undergo industrial uses outdoors. So landscaping would be unusual in a scenario like this. I would suggest that if we are required to do landscaping, it'll be xeriscaping. There will be no vegetation of any type. It'll be rock and, different type of landscaping than perhaps Commissioner Kirkley has in mind.
Yeah, I do find it would be limiting if we put trees in on their business, if they're going to be utilizing it with tenants. Can we?
No, I just think you set the bar wherever you set the bar, whether it's industrial or commercial, and you try to do some screening and some greenscape. And I'm just one vote on the planning commission, so those are my thoughts. Yep.
Any other comments or commissioners?
I move that we adopt resolution 2526 with the 2 amendments for the CEQA. And there was another one that you mentioned.
The California State Water Resource Control Board, I have it here.
IGP.
IGP.
I never pronounced that correctly. So with those 2 amendments, I would move. And I find all the therefores to be adequate personally.
Anyone second?
Second.
Second.
Vice Chair Baggett,
Aye.
Commissioner Trudgeon,
Aye.
Commissioner Kirkley,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Chair Mulvey.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, going back to the public hearings, item A, short-term rental ordinance discussion. Erin, will
Yes.
you be forming an overview before public
Yes.
comment?
Yep, I will. Thank you. So the city council has been reviewing our short-term rental ordinance or kind of lack of ordinance over the last few months. I included links to the 4 meetings that it was discussed at. So just a little bit of background. In 2019, we kind of began discussing the short-term rental ordinance, whether we needed to upgrade to it. And at that time, we decided that there was no ordinance adopted. Since then, we've been tracking permits, as you know, when we bring them to you. And we kind of had this number of 20, like, let's bring this back when we hit 20. Kind of been dancing around that number for a couple years now. Once we did some auditing of our permits, we realized we were under that number. So I have a list of the 12 active current current short-term rentals that we have, and then we have some inactive ones, and then we have 2 that are for sale. And one of our conditions on the conditional use permit is that they are not transferable. So theoretically, when these ones sell, those ones drop off the list because they cannot be transferred to the new owner. Included in the packet tonight is a map of the short-term rentals, where they are located, also where our hotels and bed and breakfasts are located, which those are, mostly they're just down the Main Street corridor. We also have on our map both the historic and the Main Street historic districts, and kind of get into that in the next portion here. So let me get back to my staff report. So in our discussions with the city council, they came up with a lot of language for the ordinance, but wanted to have the planning commission kind of hammer out the details. And one of them was the maximum number of short-term rental permits. They kind of landed on this 35 number, and that would be divided between the historic district, which is the light purple on the map. Pam, would you be able to pull up the map? So distinguishing between the historic district, which is the dark and light purple on the map, and then outside of the historic district. So one of the questions was, if we stuck with that 35, which is 2.5%. Let me just go back. We were looking at keeping it at a percentage versus a number so that it will fluctuate with the city as it fluctuates. So if we stick with that 2.5%, which is 35, how should those be distributed? Should it be 50-50? Should half of them be allowed to be in the historic district and the other half outside? Should that distribution be something other than 50-50? I think there are arguments both ways. Our historic district is closer to our downtown, where our visitors are going to come and hopefully spend their money. Potentially that would not impact downtown parking if they were in that area and could walk there. On the flip side, the houses are closer together in this downtown area. We have, valuable historic resources in some of our homes down here. So are we putting those in jeopardy of being damaged with, high turnover of rentals, things like that? So that was all stuff that the city council discussed and thought you guys could figure out for them. So first question is does that number of 35, 2.5% seem appropriate? And then how do you want to split that up? So that was kind of the big first question mark in the ordinance, the draft ordinance. The second one was our wait list. So now that we have a cap, if we're going to put a cap, how are we going to handle it when we get to a wait list? So, we're not very close to that now, but eventually we could be. Would it just be one in, one out? Review a group of them at a time, kind of on a competitive application process. So how should we deal with that?
If I could maybe comment on some of these. Yeah, so again, the council, I think, made a lot of progress on the ordinance. And again, they're really asking you guys for recommendations. And I think even if you can give them pros and cons on options, you don't have to necessarily say we want it this one way. But on this particular one, the wait list, there was a lot of discussion about maybe first in, first out isn't right, especially if we're concerned about the regions. So do you have a waiting list and then evaluate the best applicants on that list? And that's where it got complicated. So that was kind of what they're asking you guys to think about. Or do you look at the top 5? And if, it's not guaranteed that number 1 is that if there's some issue with it, maybe it's next door to another one, or they didn't really want to quantify a distribution spread, but they wanted this to be objective, but they also wanted this kind of fuzziness. So
Yes.
just a little color, I think, about what was behind some of these questions.
Yeah, and something else to consider with the wait list is the review process, the annual review, and then the renewal. And so the way we kind of come up with this annual review is check the file, make sure all the information is up to date, make sure they've been turning their TOTs in, both their forms and their money, because you are required to turn in your form, even if you are not renting, if you're collecting $0. And then reviewing if there's been any complaints. And then the renewal is a more in-depth review. And the planning commission would review that to review the rental history to determine if they should be renewed, because that was another discussion point, was if we're allowing people to have permits for short-term rentals, the purpose of them is to bring tourist money into the community. So if they're only renting it out a very short period of time, what benefit is that to the city? Maybe if they didn't have a permit, maybe they would rent it out to a long-term renter, which could be more beneficial. So kind of how to weigh the benefits that they're bringing to the city. So kind of that renewal links back to the wait list and how we would handle that. So, next steps on this, we'll bring this back to the city council. They're the final body on this, and they would adopt the ordinance. They would review your recommendations on this and then adopt the ordinance. So I don't know if we want to go back to kind of going through the questions. We have a member of the public, I'm assuming, that wants to speak, or maybe just listening. I don't know, but we'll open the public hearing for him when the commission's ready.
I just had a question. How did the city council come up with 2.5%?
I think they kind of thought of the 35. That was the number they were thinking. So we did the math.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. They wanted to start at 35, but they didn't want to have to amend the ordinance in the future. So they wanted a mechanism for it to change over time.
And that does.
Did you do a survey of how many long-term rentals we have in the city?
How you'd get that number?
What's
Yeah.
that?
I don't know even how you'd even get that number. You have to ask each individual house. Should open a public forum.
Well,
Yeah.
you can get close to looking at homeowners exemptions and but there's a lot of second
And-
homes too.
Yeah. And that was the thing that Tom realized recently, seeing some stuff from the assessor is,
Yeah.
that number seemed kind of off?
Well, no, there's a much larger number of empty second homes than
Mhm.
any of these rentals we're talking about. It was shockingly high.
Yeah.
And the 2.5% came from the 1404 residential dwelling units within the city. And so that's a mix, that's all residential dwelling units, not just single family homes. It is it does include mobile homes, multifamily, things like that. So ADUs are not allowed
So
in our
why-
code.
Why?
Open up to public and then
Yeah.
we
So-
can discuss as commission.
Well, we're just asking questions here.
So,
That's- Many
yeah,
questions.
ADUs cannot be rented as short-term rentals, but half of a duplex can.
But I don't understand why there's a hard and fast no for an ADU.
Well, that's just what
That's
the
the
code.
legislation. That's the legislation.
Okay.
Because you don't have to, they just pull a permit for an ADU, right? They don't have to get an approval by the city.
Well, so that, I don't think it's the state that's prohibiting ADUs from being short-term rentals. It's our code that says we can't.
Oh, I thought it was the state requirement. Yeah.
I've traveled elsewhere and.
Yeah. The reason why they had ADUs is to encourage more long-term housing in communities, and that's why they approved the ADUs. So I think it might be state, but anyway, they can't be used for a short-term rental. Yeah.
Okay. At this time, we'll open up to public comment if you have any, and then we can.
I'm Byron Damiani. I had a couple comments. I was at the city council meeting where they were discussing this and sending it forward, and I just had a couple things to bring up on that. Getting back to where the 2.5, I think staff actually came up with that number. They were looking at 2.5 versus 5%, kind of surveying what other cities and other areas had done in that. And the question raised at that time was, they said the 1404 really includes multifamily house. So it's apartments, it's mobile home parks. It's really things that if we were in a more urban area like Sacramento, we had high-end condos and high-end townhouses, those might be suitable for it, but I think it's unlikely that in this area, we're going to have apartments being used for short-term rentals or 55 and older mobile home parks being used for it. So if we look at the real numbers for single-family dwellings, are 808 in Sutter Creek, single-family residences. So 2.5% of those is 20. You're already at that cap. If you look at 35, that's really 4.3%. So you can make your decisions based on, whether you think that's an appropriate number or not. As I said, you're really just, if you're including mobile home parks and apartments, you're probably including things that will never become short-term rentals, and it's really pushing in more into the single-family residences as a result of that. The other point was, it says that the council recommends the city be divided into historic versus outside with 50%. Well, they really asked you to come up with looking at different percentages. They were asking about applying different percentages depending on the area, such as the historic district. It really doesn't make sense to say, let's do 50-50 because you're not treating them any differently. So what's the point of having the historic district if you're going to treat that the same as outside of the historic district? And one thing I did want to bring up is this commission, when there was an application on 13 Main Street, which is within the Main Street Historic District, this commission turned that application down. It was appealed, it went to city council. Staff recommended it. The city council overruled the commission and approved it. City council refused to do that. So I think it's pretty clear they're not interested in having short-term rentals within at least the Main Street Historic District. So I think the commission should give consideration to saying that it's not going to be an allowed use within the Main Street Historic District. Look at a percentage for the remaining historic district. And although they keep saying there are 19 of these, the map shows 20 of them, and 14 of them are already in the historic district. So I think we're getting pretty close to where we're maxing out the ability to absorb more of those. And if we really are going to go to a 35, which is essentially an arbitrary number, let's put the remainder of those outside of the historic district, limit those at 20 or wherever we are right now, and say that the remaining ones should be outside of that historic district. That's really been the tone that the commission has set and that the city council has already set. So those are certainly things that you can look at doing, that the council asked you to look at in the minutes from the April 20th meeting. So, and again, just to remind, I know that this has a potential money, generating for the city, but we're only talking about $10,000 a year potentially from approving even 35 units was what the staff projections were for this. So it's not a ton of money to start changing some of the historic district's character, which in the general plan is supposed to be preserved and balanced against development. So thank you.
Byron.
Thank you. All right, with those items in mind, open up to commissioners to discuss. Does anyone want to kick off with any discussion points?
Yeah, I had a question. Did the council talk about distribution? I mean, other than the historic and the non,
So at the
I mean, can
beginning-
you have 10 in a row? You
So
know?
we kind of talked a little bit about that, and just couldn't really settle on how that would be enforced. So they decided that did not seem like a kind of priority to have that kind of distribution next, like figuring out how many allowed in a block. And just on a side note, I was meeting with the planning manager for the city of South Lake Tahoe when they originally had a kind of buffer around them. And he said it was hard to enforce. And then you had people arguing over 6 inches. If it went over, if you put a radius around and it went 6 inches to a property, it didn't, they wouldn't allow, you were allowed to appeal that. And he said it was, they were spending so much time with that they just got away from it.
Yeah.
I
would say actually there was quite a bit of discussion over the 4 meetings, and there was pretty much a lot of disagreement between the council members. So some people were really concerned about having a lot of short-term rentals away from Main Street out in the neighborhoods. And they wanted to do this kind of block by block kind of thing. Others were, again, this kind of trade-off between, you want people staying near downtown if that's where they're going to go and trying to avoid parking impacts. And so we had talked about block by block. We talked about 5 or 6 regions, like splitting the town up into more groups, and they kind of settled on the 2.
Yeah.
And again, I would say they were never unanimous. There was always disagreement about distribution. It was just, and then we also talked a lot about, again, ease of enforcement and that kind of thing. And not, again, for $10,000, not getting too carried away, which is, I think, where they got stuck last time they worked on this ordinance.
And
Yeah.
it still requires off-street parking based on the number of bedrooms?
It does. So it does require off-street parking. We kept that in the ordinance. Another thing I wanted to bring up, because short-term rentals are allowed without a conditional use permit in like our downtown commercial zone. So the dark purple on that map, about half of that is within our downtown commercial zone. So they wouldn't be coming to us to begin with. Their constraint typically there is parking, because they don't have the off-street parking.
Yeah.
But we do have we have one short-term rental in a single-family residence, but it's zoned commercial, so they did not have to come to the planning commission. So there are a few of those within the city too, or a few residences within the city within commercial zones that don't require a conditional use permit for.
Because the zoning allows that.
Yes, it's allowed by right. So only in the residential zones does it require a conditional use permit for a short-term rental.
Which is a commercial operation.
Yeah.
But Aaron, when we have a short-term rental ordinance,
We
that could require it everywhere, right? For short-term rentals.
Let's see, how did we write it up in there? Yes, we can.
Interesting.
Where's my thing?
So again, we're getting away from the CUP and having this specific ordinance.
Permit. It would, yeah, and it would be like a specific permit for them.
And then the other question I have is, I brought one forward that was denied that you brought up, and they were advertising on Airbnb for rental. And I did find another one behind Chocolate. I forget the name of that little street there. It's a one-way street.
Yeah.
And it was advertised as a short-term rental too.
Yeah, keep sending those to us. We are following up on that.
Well, all you got to do with staff is do what I do, is get on Airbnb and look and see if they're not in there. So what do you do if they're not in there? They just,
We're going to send an enforcement letter. And again, the one you saw was minimum 7-day rentals, like $2,000. And again, we're going to send an enforcement letter out to that one.
so they can continue on.
No, there's penalties, administrative
Oh,
fines.
okay, gotcha.
Question.
So is there, I know in the past when we first started getting these, someone would be responsible with the city to get on the website periodically and make sure all were permitted. So is that the goal of the city to
They're
make
still
sure?
doing it, but
Yeah.
if you see stuff, feel free to send it.
Yeah.
So.
And
it's-
one of the requirements we will have with this new one is you have to have your permit number listed on your advertisement. And so again, it will be easier to know which one are permitted or not.
For the 5 inactive, what classifies inactive? Just non-usage for a year?
So Boston Alley has never rented. The Hayden and Opal, weren't those the ones that came to you guys a
Yeah.
couple months ago? They hadn't been renting and then they still aren't. And Elm and Mountain View, I don't know. Mason just gave me that information that they haven't been collecting any TOT from them. They're not renting or.
So in the ordinance, would there be, if there's no reporting after so many quarters, they would pull the permit?
Yeah, so our ordinance now, or the conditions we put on the permit says that if you're not remitting your forms, we can pull your permit. And so that's what we reviewed a few months ago. And so that would kind of go into this renewal review process as proposed in the ordinance, but we could do it sooner than a year if they're not submitting, because they have to submit whether they're collecting or not.
So you could maintain your short-term rental permit by just putting a goose egg every quarter.
You could, and so that's kind of would be part of that 3-year renewal,
Yeah.
especially when we're hitting our wait list and we have someone who wants to come in and rent it 50% of the days and bring in TOT for the city instead of someone just holding on to their permit, that they'll rent it eventually whenever they get around to renting it and not.
Why
waiting.
would you wait 3 years for that?
Well, that's what we had, a review and a renewal.
So they're proposing potentially annual review, because it does take a lot of man hours. to,
Yeah.
like, research.
Well, and there was a lot of discussion on council, again, if somebody spent, 6 or 9 months fixing a place up to rent, and then it was within 3 months later, they had to show progress. There was just a feeling that kind of a deeper review every 3 years made sense.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's complicated. It's not necessarily, like the biggest units that bring in the most rent would qualify. And none of this really happens till we hit the cap anywhere. So we're probably years away from it. But, one criteria you guys could think of is a mix of sizes. Like, do we want so many 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms? And again, not to get overly prescriptive, but when you think about a waiting list, there may be factors that you guys want to think about that aren't that's simple. But
I'm in favor of just first come, first serve. I think you make it too complicated we need more 4 bedrooms or something, but normally, well, I know there's a big one on my street and they take up a lot of parking when it's rented out. So
Yeah, it's gonna add so much staff time to monitor that and try and figure, just one in, one out is so
Yeah.
much simpler.
So I think, is it Jackson? I think there's some cities that, they will accrue this wait list and then they'll have a time of year where they pull them off. And
Criteria.
somehow they, again, if you're going to pull off 5, maybe you look at the top 7 or, but first in, first out works. It was just, I think several council members were concerned that might not be the best candidate.
Well, I think it's fair to do a first seen, first served. If they don't meet the permit requirements, then you can move on to the next one. But other items to consider, if you have a wait list, it would definitely be, maybe having a stipulation that you can review every 2 years or up to 5. So in a time when it's slow, you don't necessarily have to review every second year. And when it's busy, you can review it and see which ones are idle and not renting. And then you can say, look, due to inactivity, you're going to be dropped unless you can maintain 20 rental days in the next calendar year or whatever a minimum stipulation is, and whether you're going to imply a minimum rental days. The other item I was considering too with this arbitrary 35, if the population of houses increases or decreases, is that up for renewal every year, every second year, every third year? Is that going to be reviewed and adjusted? And is the number going to be rounded up or rounded down?
And that's why we were
The
going with the
percentage.
percentage versus the
But the
hard.
percentage too, is that going to be rounded up if it's, sorry, the percentage is 2.5 and it comes out to 35.3 houses. How's that going to be handled?
Yeah, we can.
I just
How
think
would you
that's-
like to handle it?
There's going to be people picking over this, and you may as well clearly define it.
Where we round up.
If it's above a 0.5, you can round up. If it's below a 0.5, you can round down.
That's a great idea. And I like the idea of the percentage. I do agree. I mean, adding residences that are never going to be rentable, like mobile homes and
mobile home park or.
mobile home parks, that's just, I don't know, I've never, on all my time in Airbnb, ever seen a mobile home be as a rentable property. So to add that number in there just seems odd to me. If we want to adjust the percentage up, that'd be something different, but to add that number in seems odd to me.
I mean, I think you definitely see apartments. I mean,
Apartments, yeah.
I've seen tents in people's backyard being rented on
Yeah.
Airbnb, so it could be anything, but yeah, I think again, it seemed to be maybe a majority consensus at a number around 35 to start and some mechanism to adjust.
Yeah. And it doesn't, because you can rent it, it does not, that doesn't supersede that if you have permission from the homeowner, your HOA, you know, if you're renting if you rent an apartment long-term, you would still need the apartment owner to sign off to say you could rent your apartment as a short-term rental.
I think it comes back to the point that it's an inaccurate number that's on there, which is 1,400. It's, you know, like you said, it's more.
I don't, I
representative.
don't even think at the mobile home park they allow this, so those should be excluded, you know, so.
So then I don't think the 1,400 number really matters because the
No.
city council liked the number 35.
So it's just the.
So whether
arbitrary-
it's 35 out of 1,400 or 35 out of 800, so it's either 2.5% or
Or 5%.
5%.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm just thinking long-term, if, I always forget the name of that giant
Gold country.
Gold Rush.
Gold Rush.
Yeah.
If Gold Rush goes in and you're set at 5% and all of a sudden another 300 houses gets dumped in, then that starts spiraling up, which
Well,
is fine.
So
I
this,
mean, a way to think about that is if the 5% is on 1,400, it will go up slower than 5% on a smaller number. A project will have more impact and add more units more quickly.
and if you also do 5% on, let's say it's 800 single family homes or whatever, it just cuts out mobile homes or apartments. If you can still rent the apartment as a short-term rental, but it's not in the number we use to calculate the percentage, then wouldn't that
Just
be?
decreases the number overall. I think for the longevity, I prefer keeping it as 1,400 at 2.5% overall because you're more likely to have more single family homes than you are mobile homes.
Well,
So,
if the council wanted 35, don't even put a percent, just
No,
pop it at 35.
no, because if you do running gold, or, I always forget the name.
Gold Rush.
So yeah, I mean, we have an application right now at Sutter Creek Ranch, formerly Gold Rush, for 150 homes.
Yeah.
So that 150 added on to 1,400, I mean, that changes that
Yeah.
number.
I like a percentage.
But if the council wanted 35, why don't you just use 35? So,
They are,
It's a lot easier to follow.
yeah, than having to redo this whole thing again for 4 years.
well, maybe you don't want any more than 35 in the city. I don't know.
You guys could recommend it, or you could, again, you could say that, that's what I was trying to say earlier, you don't have to agree on one thing. You could say some people want 35 as a fixed number. That'll be good for a number of years. You could bring it back and change the number.
Mhm.
I don't see the
Or-
population changing much in the next.
Yeah, no.
I'm happy
Right.
with
Or you
35.
could do the two.
Actually, Gold Rush is for sale for 21 million, so yeah, don't think you have to worry about that one.
No,
You know, the other thing I thought about the waiting list, could you weigh in distribution a little bit on the waiting list? You know, if you find that they're applying and there's one right next door, or there's 3 on that street, could you use that as a,
Yeah, I know you said that it was highly contentious, but I would prefer to see a stipulation that there's no more than X amount in a block. Or I know you said it was contentious with Tahoe and it was a buffer. You basically just say, if you have one house, then the 2 either side or the 1 either side cannot be
and behind.
it.
So we specifically
you know,
talked about that.
we're a different animal than Tahoe. There's so many second homes up there that
Well,
people are trying to generate revenue from, and that's why they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
a lot of
So-
second homes here too.
Yeah, but a lot of them don't want anybody else in them. They're just second homes, you know,
Oh.
so, yeah.
Yeah, so again, there was one council member who kind of saying what you were saying, Lucy, and then others were like, well, what if I bought 2 properties side by side and I wanted them to be Airbnbs?
and you can't.
And that's where we got to the 2 districts, which more council members were supportive of.
Well, I think if you live on a street and you find your neighborhood all Airbnbs, I think you'd be a little upset. So I think you need to think these out thoroughly before you knee-jerk reaction, oh, we won't put any limitations on that at all. So,
Right.
On the
Yeah.
number, I know this isn't our vote, just a recommendation.
Yeah.
Personally, I would recommend keeping it at 20. Personally, I'm fine with the percentage, whatever percentage that makes it. But I mean, been on this committee for, I don't know, 10 years or so, and to get that 20 took so long even. And there's people falling out, obviously, and there's people coming in, but it's never really, it took forever to get there. I don't know if we're gonna get another 15 applicants anytime soon, personally. I'm fine with keeping it at 20 as a recommendation.
Yeah, I thought 35 was a bit much, 20, 25 seems reasonable. And I don't know. I don't like the percentage though.
I like
Yeah.
the percentage.
Sure.
Go for it.
Just along those lines as well, the ordinance does not restrict owner occupied. There's no limit on that. This is only for non-owner occupied. So you could end up again with a situation where you've got owners deciding to do something and in the middle it's not owner occupied. And again, density probably should be looked at, not just the entire number. And the council wasn't married to 35. They said, about that or around there, but they're not stuck on that number. That was tossed out as, well, if that's 2.5% of 1404, we'll look at that. But again, we're not looking at how many single family residences we really have, and density probably should be considered. I live in the historic district now, and there are 4 of these within one block of where I am. You can look at where 3 of them out of the 4 houses are already short-term rentals. One of them's inactive, but the other 2 are active. So I'd like to have density looked at.
I know we're a small town, but I'm running the numbers of the 8 hotels. The higher this number, I know it's going to start impacting the hotels. And I know when you travel with a family, it is nice to get an Airbnb, but I'm thinking of the wedding venue, and if all 35 are rented, and I'm assuming the hotels have at least 8 rooms each, that's 110 at least visitors. I'm like, how many
Taken away.
visitors do we get on a weekend?
Yeah,
A good amount.
Okay.
the hotels, so far, I don't think have been impacted.
Okay.
We've talked to them. And again, that's much more significant.
All the hotels I've talked to are
PUP.
very against it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some of them are pretty hurting still.
Hmm.
But I mean, at the same time, I know I got married 3 years ago, and there was another wedding the same time frame, and every room in the whole town was booked. So I mean, it's sometimes needed. It's a very rare time frame that's needed, but it does happen.
Yeah, you always got your adjoining cities too. Yeah.
So I think it's been a really good discussion. I think, I don't know if you guys want to go back and try to
Yeah.
have a consensus around the questions, or 2 or 3, maybe 2 answers to each question. We
A great
I've-
call.
try to take notes of what you guys have been saying.
I think it sounds like we're in consensus to throw out the percentage for the most part. It also seems like the majority of us think 35 is a bit high, especially for when you're considering the next 5 to 10 years. I don't foresee the population changing that much. From notes, everyone seemed to be in consensus with, we're not rounding up any percentages anymore, so that's not an issue. But the stipulation of there has to be some form of density discussion. We don't know what, but that would need to be addressed.
That's the hardest one. And again,
Yeah.
they got to this 50-50 districts. That's addressing density, but you're saying you want it more fine grained.
And I think they are going to want you to come up with what that looks like.
I think we'd have to bench that for another
Yeah.
discussion then. The other points I've noted is as far as the renewal, potentially having a, review at minimum or up to, which gives flexibility within the ordinance of when it is busy to potentially review and remove ones that aren't active. It gives the city more leeway within the ordinance to do it without having to rewrite the ordinance, I think is a good
And I-
opportunity.
And I don't think that's an onerous thing for the city to do. You can do a Excel spreadsheet and enter, and I'm sure Mason probably has to track all the TOT and everything, so. I would imagine if you've got a spreadsheet and you're monitoring this stuff, you'll catch people that aren't paying too, maybe, so.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys read the ordinance. Actually, there was a agreement on a lot of the accounting and auditing changes. So again, I don't think the city would do it every year, but if we had what we thought was an active short-term rental, we'd actually can request tax forms, bank statements, and do an
Okay.
audit.
Yeah.
That would be much more intensive, obviously.
Yeah.
And then again, posting with your permit number so we can tell if you have a license. that
But
kind of thing.
but I think people just getting them, like the two we looked at,
Yeah.
they're just doing it because it's easy to do and the numbers were there.
Traveling.
Right,
for a few
and,
weeks a year.
but if they're not using it and there's other people that want to use it, it doesn't seem fair for them to take that up, so.
But I also think that the language needs to be written in that the city can revoke based on non-use or limited use less than X amount days per year.
And I like that 20 number. I mean, again, it's their prerogative, but it's nice to set at least a number on there so
Yeah.
that for staff's recommendation.
Again, it's just my impression. Aaron, speak up. I think 20, they'll be a little worried that we're going to hit a waiting list right away, maybe 25.
That's fine, as
Um,
long as you stipulate, it's
yeah.
365 days in the year. If you come up with what, you're imagining 8 weekends.
Oh, I think
No,
he's talking.
No,
number
you're
of
talking
units.
about, we were talking about the number of days you have to rent it out.
Oh,
Got it.
Yeah.
Days you have to actually have
So
it occupied.
we talked about that too. Do we have another category, of owner occupied, non-owner occupied, or part-time owner occupied kind of, people that this is truly a second home for them? But they only are up here on the weekends, so they rent it out a couple weeks during the year to cover some expenses and
And that's what I'm saying is I think
felt
it's a
too com-
stipulation to have a minimum. So if you fall less than these amount of days, then you potentially can have it revoked because there's other permits
yeah.
that could be used more.
And I think in discussing that, because that did come up, it was, what is the most important, the most important reason for having these? Is it to collect TOT? Is it to provide rentals for visitors? Is it, and they didn't really land on that.
Well,
Collecting all the
there
money
wa- there-
wasn't the most important.
there wasn't support for this third category. I think we decided it was too hard to enforce.
Yeah.
And, they're living there sometime of the year and not another. It's like, how do we track that?
I think it's more just to bring in more
Tourists.
people and tourists, because it's not so
Yeah.
much the TOT, but they're coming, they're spending money at the shops, they're viewing the area. I think,
Densifying.
and if it gets to a point where it is a wait list, this will be a item of topic.
Yeah.
This,
We
Will be
don't have any owner occupied short-term rentals
Only
Well,
one.
or one.
90.
90
Austin.
You have
Boston Alley.
one up,
90
You-
Boston Alley, but it's never been.
no, there's
Done.
one up,
Of that one,
Sutter
it's like
Crest- Sutter Crest.
the garage,
Oh, right.
that is a accessory.
Yeah, they used to live across the street from me and I know they. built
Yes.
that house.
And then
So
there's,
that one wouldn't take up a spot because they live there and they're renting the.
Well, is it a separate
People I'm
living
not
space?
worried about either. I mean, those are the people who are
Separate living.
gonna
space?
yell at their.
Oh,
town
no, I
here.
mean, if you're living there, you're gonna be
Yeah.
the first one to curtail
Not
the.
owner occupied, was like
Yeah.
a bedroom in your
but it's
house.
like their garage.
No, I get
You have
that.
two
I
that
need,
make
I
have
think you need to open
garage
those up.
doors things.
So I did hear a couple things. So Mike, at first you said first in, first out on the wait list. And then you said, let's think about distribution on the wait list.
You could put the distribution in there when you're considering issuing another permit if the densities get, I don't know how you would do that. I don't think you need to be specific, like you got a 6 feet or, just a general, but again, it's not enforceable, I guess, if you don't have
it is-
strict guidelines.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
I'd make a strict guideline if that's one per block or one within. Yard
We kind of went around that
Yeah.
because there was, Sally Knutson, I live on Badger Street. Sally Knutson has had that since day one before there was ever a Airbnb. And then the Manacebos came in and put that one in, and it was so close to the other one that discussion came up in that. But I think at least on Badger alone, there's the people that own Chocolate rented out their big house. And I don't know how many more are on Badger, but there's at least 3 on Badger.
Well,
Yeah, there's.
I think
Maybe
just based on time, we might have to have another meeting on this, but are there any other major
Well,
points you're?
Yes.
The other thing is the historic versus the,
Not historic.
Yeah.
is there a desire to limit or not have any on historic Main Street? Did the council talk about that at all?
I feel like the parking kind of excludes those for the most part.
I think, I know, in a world where everyone's equal and equality, I don't think it's fair. Because I have children, fair is a very big topic in our household. I don't think it's fair to exclude houses based on their location alone in that sweeping category.
Well, we did one already.
But that, well, I've rejected that based on the 5 people
Around.
voicing opinions on it, not on the location
Well,
itself.
you're not going to get anybody voicing any opinions once this ordinance is in place, because there won't be any
No,
public
they
hearing.
will. They'll continue to come before us.
Yeah, the approval process is the same.
Is this?
Oh, it is. I
Yes.
thought it,
No, this
No,
doesn't.
in one of the, in our first,
It doesn't bypass
our
that.
first city council
Yeah.
discussion, there were some comments about just having it staff, like, if we have enough, check boxes in the ordinance, can we staff just do this? And then we decided that it's still best to come to the planning commission.
It seems like the whole reason we're having this discussion is because of what happened at 23 Main. So I'm frankly a little surprised that they don't address historic Main Street as either a cutoff or a limit or something.
Well, they started this discussion in 2019, but I think it definitely kind of reignited after
Right.
that. So
Yeah, that's fair to say.
I don't know. In a world where you can't tell people not hire them for specific features, races, sex, I don't think you can completely eliminate one street. I think that is entirely unfair.
I don't see the connection. I
Well,
don't
you're-
disrespect, but I just.
No, that's fine. I just.
you're going to limit, you're already talking about distributing the short-term rentals in non-historic areas and historic.
I don't agree with that either, but.
I tend to join Lucy in that.
So
I
we
don't
have-
see, I
I've
don't see a
heard much
point
from-
between historic versus non, but
Yeah.
I think every time there's gonna be a application for a Main Street Historic District short-term rental, there's gonna be a crowd of people complaining about it. And
But I would say that's the reason they come before us. We can hear that discussion, and if all the neighbors are agreeants, or if for some reason everyone is in agreeance, maybe that's the one exception. But that's why they have the ability to come talk to us and explain their thing.
We had 2 short-term rentals in town that were paying TOT to the county for
Yeah,
a number of
that was-
times. I really think the city's gonna have to get their arms around looking at, I mean, my wife used to work for the city, and they used to go through the paper and look at fictitious names to see if they had a business license, and that's part of being due diligence of being, having a city, so I think you're gonna have to watch that a little closer, because you're gonna find people that are just gonna do it, so.
well, to respond to Mr. Baggett's position is that 23 Main Street invested a whole lot of time and money, and they redid their entire backyard, and they put a whole bunch of effort into thinking that they were going to get approved because technically
Everybody was.
they were following all the rules. And then all the complaints shut all that down. And so I don't know that that's fair for potential investors.
I don't have.
I lean towards historic Main Street, not, so.
I think there ought to be some limit on historic Main Street. I don't want to propose what it is.
That's a hard thing. I mean, I don't see any of them ever going through with it.
One tried.
one tried. I mean, we've had,
That's what I was saying, one, but it comes back to the density thing. If you have two, no more than two a street or one per block, then it kind of caps them right there.
yeah, the 50-50 for me doesn't make much of a difference personally, because if I'm renting an Airbnb, I want it to be downtown. I want to be walking.
No, I totally agree.
The whole point. I mean,
Well, I think that's why most of them are clustered in the.
yeah, which is the point.
But some people want to have their space and,
Yep.
they can have some up out of town a bit. And then
You're
you
going to
just drive.
Pine Road, or you're
Yeah.
going to unincorporated Sutter Creek at that point.
Yeah, there's quite a few in the
There's a
unincorporated.
bunch of them.
So we hit all the talking points or?
We
is
hit-
it-
There's one.
We didn't fix anything.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
I don't think you coalesced. You
No.
hit all the
No.
points.
Well, how
That's not
many
our-
meetings did the council have? You wanted us to coalesce
Yeah.
one meeting?
Had 4.
So I said, okay, so
We've been
Yeah.
talking this for
we,
years.
I just, the conversation on Main Street, anything, but I mean, from right here down is all zoned
Commercial.
downtown
Yeah.
commercial.
Sure.
saying
So we
is,
can't do anything.
Like, I don't know how many houses are there in the historic
And
downtown
that's it.
street?
Thing.
I mean, there are apartments on the upper levels, right?
So it's just really this strip of houses right here.
and if you put a density limitation, if there's just one, they're capped anyway.
Then you've got.
Well, there's none on Main Street. There's just the ones on Badger
Turned down.
and Nickerson.
Well, I didn't turn it down because of its location.
Badger all the way up to Sutter Hill Road is residential.
Yeah.
The-
I don't know how many houses that is, and there's the apartment complex at the
The-
very
At the end.
south end.
The reason why we turned the one down is we
One,
had
two,
vocal
three,
neighbors. And you can have vocal neighbors at every
Yeah.
line.
Absolutely.
Like,
Sure.
And does that mean you're gonna deny them because you got vocal neighbors?
If it-
Well,
Sometimes
they listen to vocal neighbors, but they hung their hat on historic district. They said, this is historic and we don't want to blight on the beauty of what brings people here. It was kind of what their discussion was.
Well, there's so few homes there in that little strip that I think you just eliminate. You don't, no Airbnbs there. Sorry to say it, but
If you buy
I-
it, that's, the-
I would think the city would be liable for a lawsuit if they just arbitrarily said, we'll approve this one, but we won't approve yours because the neighbors didn't like it. So,
public comment. That's what we're here for, is to listen to the
Yeah.
public.
I don't know. We've had a lot of negative comments and we've approved them, so
Not many.
if 2 or 3 people come, so.
it's about like 10 or 12 houses right here.
Plus the apartment complex at the end.
Yeah, kind of before the apartment complex.
someone's gonna rent one of those.
I've rented worse, to be honest, in Texas.
All right, so we're split with that.
Yeah.
So the
You
general,
gave some good points. Thank you very much. I feel like there was some consensus.
I mean, we're only gonna spend about like 3 years worth of TOT getting this
I know.
worked out at this
I know.
point. I'm joking. It's
Well,
not
and that was,
that
I
much.
mean, when we first started talking about this, before 2019, it was so it could be not hitting us at all. And
Yeah.
get rid of staff time, get rid of of this. And it's kind of shifted, which is fine. I like having the ability for people to talk personally, but it keeps shifting.
Well, it is 7:10. Can we move on to the last item? I think we've beaten this topic.
was there general consensus? We don't want to do 50-50 for the historic
That could be
District
another item.
and just let them go wherever they go.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we will come back to you guys. I would give it some more thought and maybe come up with some more ideas.
we are going to, or they are going to.
They
Well,
will,
apparently we are going to magically find consensus in the next month. Since we can't talk about it
It'll come
outside
to
of
us in
the-
our dreams.
I mean, if anyone does any of their own outside research and wants to send it to me, ordinances you find,
Okay.
things like that, kind of address
Yeah.
how you think.
it's a good point. We did survey a bunch of other cities, looked
Yeah.
at their
Yeah,
ordinances.
we did that before, and that was really helpful. the South Lake, and then one like Monterey, and there was a third one down south, and that really helped me build it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will do our best to have the same thoughts and opinions. And until such time, can we bench this?
Sure.
Put a pin in it? All right, moving on to item B. Approve amend the safety element of the City of Sutter Creek's general plan. Now, it's my understanding that there is no review or approval. You are just changing the specific language.
Yes. So over the last year and a half, the city, along with the county, drafted a local hazard mitigation plan. So it's a countywide local hazard mitigation plan that has annexes for the individual cities. Part of the reason of doing that is for funding to qualify for additional funding during emergencies. So last month, the city council actually adopted the local hazard mitigation plan, but it needs to be incorporated into our safety element, which is an element of the general plan. In order to amend the general plan to incorporate it, that must go through the planning commission first. So again, you aren't reviewing the local hazard mitigation plan. That has already been adopted. You are just, you'll see in the resolution, there's 3 paragraphs in italics. That's what I added to
Isn't
the
this a
safety
bit
element.
superfluous for us? Like we don't. I'm just putting it out there, like,
Yeah.
do we need
uh,
to?
Well, yes,
Yes,
because our
we-
municipal code says in order
have
to
to,
amend the
yes.
general plan,
Okay.
you have to, the planning commission has to recommend approval to the city council. So it would be adding those 3 paragraphs referencing our local hazard mitigation plan.
I think they're
And-
well written.
Yeah, and if you recommend approval to the city council, it will go next Monday. So
I'll make a motion to approve
there we go.
resolution 2526.
Second that motion.
All right, roll call.
Commissioner Kirkley,
Aye.
Vice Chair Baggett,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Trudgeon,
Aye.
Chair Mulvey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay.
All right, with no other items on the agenda, I am calling close to the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
You guys.
Well, it's a high volume.
It's hard.